A top 25 reveal show. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and as always, I'm joined by my partners, Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo. And I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Gold Athletics. Coaches, are you looking for that ideal fundraiser to help your program raise money? Visit goldathletics.com for more information today. Matt Ross and his team have an exciting array of fundraisers that they can set you up with to help your program make money. Are you ready to make that money? Well, then visit goldathletics.com today for more information. Gentlemen, it's great to see you. I feel like it hasn't been that long. It actually hasn't. Last time we spoke was on Saturday. But we're going to be doing our top 25, our final top 25 poll reveal show. And, we've already got our just outside schools up here on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're just briefly going to talk about the schools that are just on the outside looking into our top 25. Then we're going to do it by 5 school increments, and then we're going to talk about each school, and Tyler's going to give his rationale for why we put them there, and then we're going to culminate it, of course, with our top 10. We're going to talk about each program that's in the top 10, and then we will reveal the number one program in our final top 25 poll. This poll will also be found on anyfootballjournal.com as well. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening before we get started here?
Doing good. We're not quite transitioning to basketball season in Mukala and I's case, but I'm sure this will spark some debate here. So let's dive into it.
Oh, absolutely. And I never transition to basketball season, so for me it's always football season. But I agree. I think it is going to spark some conversation, and of course, you can feel free to join the conversation. Show is coming to you live on Facebook, X, our Twitch page, and our YouTube page. So feel free to jump on and join the conversation. All right, first up, we're going to start with our just outside list. And these are the schools that just missed making our final top 25 poll. Just some thoughts here, Tyler. I'm going to start with you in terms of the schools that are on this list. A lot of really good programs that made some deep playoff runs on this just outside list.
Yeah, well, just this is all in alphabetical order here, so this isn't ranked 26 to 40. It's just the 15 teams that were next in line for the top 25, starting with Abington. Mukala's cousins down there, they were upset in the second round by Fenwick. So I don't think many people saw that one coming, but that Fenwick team is tough. They're well coached. Abington had a great year though. That loss doesn't take away from what they did. Lost to Duxbury close, beat Hingham, beat Norwell. They had a very solid season. Andover was up and down as a Division I team. On Saturday night, we talked about them as a team to keep an eye on in 2026. Ashland had a nice season. Same for Bedford. The last spot in Burlington gave the edge to Bedford as they won a close one on Thanksgiving against Burlington. I think this is the first time in the history of New England Football Journal's existence that Duxbury did not finish the year in the top 25, which just speaks to the consistency of that program. I expect them to rebound and have a better showing next year, which is wild to say because they were still a Division IV semifinalist and it was a down year, bordering on catastrophic for a program like Duxbury. Hudson, they lost a lot, namely Jake Attaway, but they had a nice season. Made it once again to the Division VI semifinals for the third straight year. Another solid season for Hudson. And then, some of these other schools, Leominster, I gave some serious consideration to after what Osiris Lopez and company did in that second round game against St. John's Prep. Lowell had a nice season, one of their best seasons in years. I think that's a program to watch in Division I as well in 2026 on a upward trajectory. And some of these other teams like Norwell was in the penultimate top 25. Had they kept that one a little bit closer or be Fairhaven, they would have stayed in there. But they're just on the outside looking in. And then North Reading is the last team I'll touch on quickly here. They had a nice win over Medfield, and then they were really the team that put the biggest scare into Shawsheen in the postseason. So North Reading easily could have been the Division V champs.
Mukala, any thoughts on the teams that were on the outside looking in? Any surprises for you?
No. These are all teams that had really good season. Abington, Duxbury. it would say it's a shock to see Duxbury out the top 25, but they're a young team this year. They had a really good season, but they just youth was just something that hindered them. North Reading gave North Reading, I think, was probably the only team that gave Shawsheen a little sweat. He beat them and minus the first meeting with St. Mary's, and Marblehead. I think us a team we'll be seen making noise next year. Lowell as well, but I can't really disagree with this list. Abington, they had a great season. As you said, the relatives, kind of disappointed they weren't at Gillette, but what they did tell me is they got a lot to look forward to, especially they got a nice core coming back, and also they got some really young guys that they're looking forward to help the program bring another state championship to the school. So they're excited for what's happening in the future.
Is there a program that's on this list here before we move on to the top 25 that you think could potentially be in our preseason top 20 this upcoming summer?
I think a few to take a look at. I think Andover, Duxbury, potentially Lowell, and then even Marblehead, Methuen, Marshfield are programs that I think have promising outlooks. So I think you could see definitely 3, but as many as 6 of these teams in the preseason top 25.
Yeah, Lincoln Sudbury is another program to keep an eye on in D2. That's another team that could potentially end up in our preseason, if not in our preseason top 25, certainly in our top 40. But they're a program to keep an eye on. They bounced back this year, and I know it's tough sledding in D2, but I think at the end of the day, this is a program that for a very long time was a yearly contender under Tom Lopez. They're back. They bounced back this year. Certainly another program to keep an eye on. All right, gentlemen, we are going to move on to our top 25. So we're going to start with 25 to 21. So there you go. There's teams 25 to 21. We're going to start with number 25, Amesbury. Tyler, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Amesbury had a great year. I mean, if Gus Green doesn't rip off that touchdown run at Gillette, they could have easily won Division 7. Had a strong resume. They were undefeated until getting to Gillette. They had a strong win over North Reading. Again, that's North Reading's kryptonite is Amesbury. So I think both teams were, worthy of mentioning here, and I think they were down to the final couple spots. But a consistent theme throughout this, not in all cases, but in some cases, head-to-head was the differentiator, and I used that in this case here. North Reading could have easily taken that top 20, number 25 spot, as well as like Leominster, a couple other teams, but ultimately decided to go with Amesbury, and you see Cohasset and Randolph on this list too, which we'll talk about. Don't think of this as like, I'm saying Randolph would beat Leominster in a game. It's just more about rewarding these smaller schools for outstanding seasons, in some case undefeated in championship seasons.
Yeah, and honestly, this looks about right. Cohasset, Randolph both had, Randolph had a really solid season. That was a very, very good football team this season. Amesbury just coming up short. They were just a play away from probably winning the state championship, and you got 3 teams that were at Gillette Stadium in 21 through 25. So it's not really nothing surprising here. Archbishop Williams, another team, very, very solid season. They got some guys coming back for that, and Mansfield, another Hockomock. When we talk about Hockomock leagues, they always have a good core of teams in there. But this is a 21 through 25. It's about right.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and come at you guys from a fan perspective for a sec. So 2 things here. 1, people could potentially ask, how is Mansfield the top 25 team? Now, I think the counter argument to that is they want a share of the Davenport title. They play in the Hawk, played a good schedule. The other question people could potentially ask is Randolph too low? They won it in Division 8. They only had 1 loss on the season. Should they be higher?
Yeah, I mean, Randolph was actually undefeated, but they
why do I think they had a loss? Whatever.
Yeah, no, they
were
were
undefeated
this year.
Yeah, they were undefeated. Okay.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's just balancing. You're trying to balance resumes. So I look for signature wins. Strength of schedule factors into this as well. So when you talk about a team like Mansfield, they played the Hockomock Gauntlet. They also played teams like Springfield Central in the non-league. So it was a very challenging schedule for Mansfield. 4-loss team, but and they were on the outside looking in before that win over Foxborough on Thanksgiving. We'll talk about Foxborough in a little bit, but that's why Mansfield ultimately snuck in. They were taken out of the top 25 after the loss to King Philip, just due to the nature of that game. But ultimately, I think their resume is strong enough to be in here. And then, Cohasset and Randolph, I think if you're looking for some sort of analogy to try to figure out how we do this, like if you have think of Randolph as like an undefeated team in the MAC, they're not going to be ranked higher than maybe like a 2-loss team or 3-loss team from the SEC.
No, I think that's a terrific analogy. And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because, like I said, fans might look at them and say, okay, they ran the table. They won their second Super Bowl in 4 years. Should they be higher than, let's say, teams that might have 2 or 3 losses? But I think your analogy there, Tyler, makes a whole lot of sense because, again, there is a difference between strength of schedule, higher divisions versus lower divisions. All right. Next up, we are going to take a look at teams 16 through 20. There's some pretty good programs on this list. A couple of teams, too, that I think a lot of people are going to look at and say, should they have been where they are or should they have been lower? For example, Masconomet. Is Masconomet too high? Tyler, what was our thinking here with this part of the poll?
I think Masconomet had a very impressive season, just a couple losses. We'll talk about both of those programs coming up. They mostly went toe-to-toe with Milton in the quarterfinals. So I think, if they were in a different division, like they could have gone on a deeper run potentially in Division 2 than they did in Division 3 just because of how loaded Division 3 was. We saw 4 really, good quarterfinal matchups on paper there in Division 3. I think Masconomet's body of work speaks for itself. I thought they had a nice year here. I know they, went down to the wire in a couple of games, like against Marblehead, and they needed to come back in that game. But ultimately, they won the game, finished with only 2 losses. They were a quarterfinalist in the deepest bracket in the state. I think they're, they had one of the better offenses north of the city this year, led by running back Jack Fabiano. I think there's certainly an argument to be made for some other teams, maybe like Central Catholic, Bridgewater, Raynham, that we could have flipped some of these 5 schools. But I think Masconomet had a solid body of work this year, and they deserve to be this high.
Yeah, Masco definitely. I think they. I could see them being top 50. So, but yeah, they definitely had a great season. The Northeastern Conference was probably. Was a really good conference as far as matchup. I think they had a good amount of teams in that league make the playoffs this season. There were some great games in that playoffs. And Masco, when you talk about Fabiano and that core in that group, really solid season. Bridgewater, Raynham, and Central Catholic. We talked about them this preseason, how they just have the talent. And see what they could do. They did as much as they could do. They got all the way to the Final Four and were able to, they were able to make a run at it this year. They just ran into a team that day that was just on a, they were on a buzzsaw, I should say, that day. But and then Bridgewater Raynham, that was a team we all were looking for this in the preseason to see how they did. And they made a good run at it. They were a play away from probably getting to Gillette Stadium, but regardless, they had a very solid season. Those are Masco, Foxborough, Bridgewater, Raynham, and Central Catholic. They're fitting where they are right now. You could see. You could have argument of them having like a little lower seeds, but you could see where they are in this rankings and how they fit, showing how their season went. So it's not. This 16 through 20, that seems about right. And all these teams, even Canton too, they all had a great season. So, I can't really complain about this one.
Yeah, I think Central Catholic is a team that certainly is positioned to be in our top 15 next year. They return some key contributors from a team that really, you can make the argument, played the toughest schedule in New England this year. They had a really, really good schedule, and I thought they represented themselves very well considering how good their schedule was. BR unfortunately graduates Jack Lambert, but in talking to Ian Bain a couple weeks ago, he's really excited about what he has coming back. Trojans are another program that could very easily be in our preseason top 15, top 20. Canton had a terrific year. Yeah, they lost to Foxborough and North, but they made a strong run there. They got to a state semifinal before losing to Tewksbury. Those kids went through a lot. Their coach was relieved of his duties. The assistants had to step up and run the program, and the players rallied around Coach Fallon and the assistants and had a hell of a season and a hell of a run. And that program has been pretty good the last few years, both under Dave Bohan and Anthony Fallon. So that's a program that has bounced back. Foxborough, disappointing finish, losing 14-7 to Shawsheen in the D5 Super Bowl. Play a really good schedule, another strong season for Jack Martinelli's squad. They do graduate a lot, though, so it's to be determined whether or not they could potentially be a top 15 or top 20 team in our preseason poll in 2026. Masco graduates Jack Fabiano, but this is a team that's got some good young talent returning. It's a program that could once again be heard from in Division III next year. I think, again, going back to 21 to 25, the naysayers may look at this and say, okay, Randolph went undefeated, won the D8 Super Bowl. Should they have slotted somewhere here? But by and large, I think when you look at this group here and the schedule they played, you could see why they got the nod in our eyes over Randolph at 21 and why we didn't put Randolph in this group. Because, again, specifically of programs like Central Catholic and Foxborough, they played really good schedules that prepare them to play in the playoffs. And while they might not have won a state title like a Randolph, I think their strength of schedule gives them an advantage in terms of polling purposes. All right, next up, we are going to go 15 through 11, and we've got some interesting programs here to discuss. And obviously, you've got a couple programs here that got to Gillette, and one won a state title, one did not. You've also got some traditional power programs here. So, Tyler, I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on 11 to 15. I think that when I look at this part of the poll, I think that this is a pretty good – I like this part of the poll because I think we got it right here. I think these 5 teams are right where they should be, in my opinion.
But yeah, Barnstable's a team that spent much of the season in the top 10. At one point hit the top 5. They sort of sputtered down the stretch there. They lost on the road to LaSalle, who's obviously the second best team in Rhode Island, and the top 2 team in Rhode Island every year. And then they fell in the second round to North Attleboro, but they didn't play their best game against Doherty in round 1 either. So they sort of peaked a little bit too early, I think, but it was still a great season. You got the Armstrong brothers, Jason Dyer, Kyle Coffin, a lot of pieces on that team. I think it's the best team that coach Ross Jackola's had with Barnstable. So they're certainly worthy of finishing the season in the top 25. Fairhaven, what can you say about Derek Almeida? He was named Patriots Coach of the Year, and deservingly so. He's committed to that triple option offense, and they run it perfectly there in Fairhaven. What they did this year was very impressive. It started off, their offense was, scoring 40 points a game from, right from the beginning of the season. The defense wasn't playing too well early in the year. They lost that shootout game to West Bridgewater, and from that point forward, the defense really started to play well, and I think they caught up to the offense. And the defense, or then the team went on a 7-game winning streak and really, really breezed through the Division 6 tournament. I know, Norwell was a 2-possession game, but that one was never really in doubt, I don't think, especially after halftime. Like, it was tied 14-14 at halftime, but Fairhaven sort of had a demoralizing drive there to start the third quarter, and that's just what that triple option offense does to teams. North Attleboro, great resume. I was surprised they lost to Mansfield, but they beat Foxborough. They beat Barnstable. They lost to KP twice, which we'll talk about KP a little bit. Another great year for Coach Mike Strachan. I think a lot of people didn't really know what to expect from this team this year, as they were, they graduated a ton from their state championship team. guys like Bannon and Fasoli and Paradise, they graduated so many core pieces, but they were able to get back to Gillette this year, and as the 7th seed in a brutal Division III, they were able to make it back. So they definitely are worthy of being here as well. And then we round out this group of teams with 2 Bay State League teams, Natick and Milton. They've both spent pretty much the entire year in the top 25. I think Milton was on the outside looking in before the season, but they entered in week 2 or 3 and never looked back. They made a run to another semifinals under Coach Dembowski, and Natick could have very easily have been in the Division I state semifinals as well. It was a nice year for Natick.
This top 50, I mean, all these teams all had solid season and deserving of the top 15. I'll probably put Fairhaven probably at around 12 or something like that, just because of what they did this season. But overall, every single one of these teams had a really solid season. Milton, Natick, North Attleboro, and Barnstable, all solid, all playoff teams. Milton just ran into a buzzsaw. They just ran into a North Attleboro team in that semifinals that just was really locked in. They couldn't really get much going in that game. But I don't see no complaint. I probably put North Attleboro probably at 11 or so, but besides that, I think I'd probably move North Attleboro and Fairhaven down a little bit, but besides that, I think this is 11 through 15 sounds about right.
Yeah, and I think people could argue that. So I'm going to ask you, Tyler, what do you think went into why is Milton so high in your eyes? You did explain it to a degree, but if someone sees this and says, okay, I like this list, but I probably would not have had Milton at 11, what would your counter to them be?
I think they had a great year. I think we talked about one of their wins there in the playoffs against Masconomet. They beat Natick in the regular season. They had that tough hiccup early in the season to Weymouth, but I think that was sort of a wake up call for that team. From that point, that point forward, I think they started playing with more physicality than we've seen from Milton teams in the past. And then we know what a Steve Dombuski offense can do. So from that point on, until they ran into North Attleboro, they were really clicking, and they had that nice win against Natick and Masconomet. I think they played really well down the stretch. They was like that 6 or 7 week stretch where they looked as good as any team in Division III and like a top 10 team in the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at this list, I think to Mukala's point, you might be able to make an argument for Fairhaven at 11 only because they won it all. But again, when we compile this list and Tyler does the bulk of the work, our thought process isn't necessarily, okay, this team got to Gillette and won a Super Bowl. Obviously, that matters. They won a Super Bowl. That's a big deal. That's going to factor into where we rank them in our final poll. But I also think we have to look at strength of schedule. We have to look at leagues, conferences. That goes into this too, because then there's the potential for a head-to-head element there, and could the teams in lower divisions potentially play a similar schedule to some of these teams that we may rank higher, and how would they look if they played a similar schedule? Would they win as many games? Could they get to Gillette? Could they potentially win it? So there's a lot that goes into it, and we like having this conversation, and I always like to play devil's advocate with our final polls because I kind of want to come at it from the perspective of the fans and the fans of these programs. And in a lot of ways, that allows us, as we're doing the show in real time, to look at this and say, okay, did we get it right here? Could we have potentially moved somebody around? Our conversation, our dialogue enables us to, when we think about, all right, our preseason poll next year, it allows us to go back and look at this and say, well, this is where we had so-and-so and so at the end of the year. This is what happened in the offseason. Now maybe they're a top 40 team as opposed to a top 25 team or vice versa. So, Tyler doesn't just, like I said, he does the work here, but he doesn't just, he rationally looks at this. He looks at it objectively. He knows all the programs. He covers them throughout the course of the season. So this isn't coming just from us saying, okay, based on final records, who got to Gillette, who didn't, who got to a sectional final, who didn't, we're doing this. So a lot does definitely go into it from a thought process standpoint. You are watching the final MIAA top 25 poll reveal. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partners, Tyler Amaral and Mukala Kabongo. I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Gold Athletics. Visit goldathletics.com today for more information. If you are looking to find a fundraiser to help your program raise money that fits your program, your school, your community, Matt Ross has that fundraiser for you. Again, visit goldathletics.com for more information. He and his team will put you on the right track to make that money. All right, gentlemen, we are ready to reveal our top 10, the top 10 teams in our final top 25 poll for the season here in Massachusetts. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each team individually. So we did 11 through 25 in groups of 5. Now we're going to take a look at each team individually. So without further ado, let's start with the number 10 team in our final top 25 poll, the Winchester Red and Black. What a historic season. They haven't had a season like this in Winchester in a long time. Unfortunately, it came to an end at the hands of Catholic Memorial in the second round of the playoffs. But nonetheless, it doesn't take away from what was a terrific season for a program that's been pretty good the last 3 years, Tyler, and it climaxed this season with the type of season that they had.
I mean, they had a great season. I know, the pushback on this one is going to be they made it to the semifinals, but they lost 49-0. They ran into a CM buzzsaw. And if CM wasn't in Division II, Winchester, I still maintain that they probably would have won Division II, or it would have been a toss-up between them and Bishop Feion. It was a terrific year. Brian Harrison, one of the best linebackers in the state. Gianni DePremio is an all-state caliber, running back. So, which leads me to, if you're watching this show, send us along your nominees for the all-state team. I think you'll see both DePremio and Harrison on those offensive and defensive teams, respectively. But Winchester had a terrific year. They just ran into a loaded CM team who, other than Marshfield, nobody's been able to solve in Division II to this point.
Yeah, Winchester and if there were any other division, we'd probably see them in we probably would have seen them at Gillette, but yeah, they just ran into a team that was just too much for them. But regardless of that, they were undefeated until that point. They were scoring a lot of points. They had a very, very, very good season. They got nothing to hang their heads low on. But yeah, it was one of those situations. They just ran into a team that was really talented. But they're also really talented at themselves. I mean, I don't know when was the last Winchester team to put up a season like this as far as offensive wise and how they were putting up points. But I give a lot of credit to them. They had a really solid season.
They did. And again, when your only loss is to CM, who has been arguably the best team in the state the last 5 or 6 years, I mean, you had a really good year. They were averaging over 40 points a game. You mentioned DePremio. He's been one of the best backs in the state the last couple of years. I mean, again, I think to the outside observer, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, well, you're putting a team in your top 10 that didn't even get to a state, to a semifinal, that lost in the second round. But again, you're not just measuring this on that aspect of it or whether or not they got to Gillette. You got to look at the whole body of work. And when you look at the whole body of work, Winchester had a pretty good season. So congratulations to the Red and Black on a great season. All right. The 9th team in our top 25 poll is the Bishop Feion Shamrocks, who lost the Division II Super Bowl on Saturday to Catholic Memorial 41-14. Nonetheless, it doesn't take away from a great season for Brian Pinnabell, not Annabelle. Brian Pinnabell's squad. The announcer, by the way, in the press box called Coach Pinnabell Coach Annabelle the other day. So there you go. But nonetheless, it doesn't take away from a terrific season for Brian Pinnabell's squad. And look, this Bishop Feion program, especially since Pinnabell has gotten there, has had a terrific run here. Again, we saw it the last few years with King Philip. Unfortunately, if you're in Division II, you're going to run into CM at some point, and chances are they're one of the most, if not the most talented team in the state. They're going to end your season. They ended Feion season, but if you're a Bishop Feion fan and if you're a member of the Bishop Feion football program, you have nothing to be ashamed of. This was a solid season for the Shamrocks.
It was a solid season. And you mentioned, they call them Brian Annabelle. I was watching Saturday on the YouTube feed, and I think for every game, it kicks off and they zoom in on the coach, and it's like, Bishop Fee and Coach Brian Pinnabell, and it's not even the right coach. So I might want to just kind of, tidy that up a little bit there on the broadcast for next year.
Well, hey, I'm the same idiot who failed to remember that Randolph went undefeated. So no one's perfect.
Yeah, but great year from Fee, and the season was bookended with losses to Catholic Conference Power, Xaverian, and CM, the state champions of Division One and Division Two. But Fee and bulked up their schedule, expecting to make a run this year, and we're going to see this in future years as well. As Fee is now an independent in football, so we're going to see, I think, a lot of Hockomock schools on the schedule, probably some Catholic Conference schools on the schedule. They're going to be battle tested every year. It was a great year for them. I think, they could have easily flip-flopped with Winchester, but ultimately Winchester lost in the semis to CM. Fian did make it to Gillette, and they played them, a little bit closer. And what's funny about that game is, like, it started off as like, can Fian hang here for a little bit? Can Fian hang for at least a half or maybe 3/4 when, they tied it at 7 and CM had seemingly a million pre-snap penalties. Kind of looked like Fian be able to hang for a little bit, but then, CM, of course, just does what they do this time of year and rolled. But it was a terrific year for Fian. I was at the game against BR. They were down in that game. They had 5 comeback wins this year. That was one of them in the state semifinals. They battled back in that one to get to Gillette. So it was a terrific season for Bishop Fian and their first, appearance at Gillette in 13 years.
Yeah, that was my first glance at Feehan this season. I was impressed, despite them losing in that championship game, but I was really impressed. Kane Mankins, he's as good as advertised. I can see why Ole Miss and some other big schools wanted him. He was giving Catholic Memorial issues in that first half. They were having a hard time blocking him, but that defense was really good. A very balanced offensive attack, and those guys they don't got nothing to hang their heads on. They had a really solid season, a really really solid football team. But yeah, it was another situation, kind of like Winchester. They just ran into a team that was determined to win it all.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think that the hardest thing with CM is matching up, right? You can be in the game, and I've coached in those Super Bowls against them. You can be in the game, but it's that 1 or 2 plays that they're able to make in those middle quarters that separates them. That game was a 21-7 game at the half, and then they were able to pull away right out of the gate in the third quarter. And so I think that is usually what happens against them. If you don't make that next play or get that next score to inch you closer, it's over if they get it. And that's essentially what happened here. And Tyler, you mentioned the penalties. That was a problem for CM. It was also a problem for Fian. It cost them in the second quarter when they were still in the game, and they ended up having a touchdown called back. So it's look, it is what it is. Now's not the time to debate whether or not who should be in what division and what the impact is. But the bottom line is this program is back. You mentioned their first trip to Gillette in 13 years, and they've got enough returning next year that this is a program that will be an independent and should be in the mix for our preseason top 25 poll. All right, next up we have the number 8 team in our top 25 poll, the Tewksbury Redmen, who had a disappointing 42-41 loss to Scituate on Saturday in the Division IV Super Bowl. Outside of that, this was a tremendous season for this program, a program that's perennially good, wasn't as good last year. They got off to a really strong start. I think people got to see what this team is all about. They looked like the favorite from start to finish. Unfortunately for Brian Aylward's squad, they ran into an experienced Scituate team in the Super Bowl that not only had experience, but had the talent to match, and that was the difference.
It was. They were pretty comfortably sitting at number 6 for the majority of the year. They had some dominant wins, pretty much, wire to wire this year. They had that close game against Lowell, and I honestly thought they would beat Scituate by a couple scores. I thought their resume was that good, and I thought the team was that good, and we know they're well coached. still a terrific year. They're 15 seconds away, 16 seconds away from a state championship. So they almost got it done. It was just a fantastic year. Their best team in years. They made it to Gillette 7 years ago, but I think this team was probably better. I think this is probably their best team since 2013 when they last won a state championship. Will Harrison's back next year, so that's obviously a key piece. As we look forward to 2026, but ton of skill on this team. Ben Christopher, Emeka Olu, of course. Johnny Sullivan had 2 interceptions at Gillette. I believe he had 13 on the year, which is just a ridiculous total. So they were good on both sides of the ball. I was really surprised to see them go up 42 to Scituate, but that's a great Scituate team, and of course we'll talk about Scituate here. We still haven't talked about them yet, but great year for Tewksbury. They're absolutely worthy of being in the top 10 here, despite the loss at Gillette.
Listen, man, they played. That game was probably one of the best games I've seen in the high school football in the past.
I agree.
Yeah,
that was the game of the weekend. As good as the D1 Super Bowl was, that was the game of the weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I concur with that. That was just a great back and forth game. Both teams making play. Tewksbury they were just a defensive stop away from bringing home a state title. That's pretty much what it came down to. But you got to give those guys a lot of credit for fighting. Johnny Sullivan, Emeka Olu, Will Harris. There were so many guys that were making plays in that game. It was just fun to watch. And throughout the season, those guys were in close games. They were in blowout games, but they knew how to win. So to see them not pull this one out, it's kind of disappointing. But it's one of those things you just got to tip your hat off to Scituate, making all the right plays down the stretch. The kickoff out of bounds and the pass interference, those were the 2 biggest plays of this game for Tewksbury. Those 2 plays, especially the kickoff, they probably would wish they had that back. Giving them a ball at like the 40 or something like that. You don't want to do that. But regardless of all that, this was a really fun team to watch. If anybody watched this team during the regular season, they were explosive defensively. They were physical. They made plays. They're just a fun group of players to watch. But it's kudos to Tewksbury.
All right. Next up, we have the number 7 team in our top 25 poll, and that is Shawshene Valley Tech, the Rams, defeating Foxborough in the Division 5 Super Bowl 14-7, finishing the season undefeated. They still currently have the state's longest winning streak. Another great season for Al Costabile's squad. And look, I think a lot of people coming into this season didn't think that they could get back there. I think Sid Tilsley was such a big part of that team the last couple of years that I think people forgot just how good this team was, especially on defense. This year, you didn't have Sid Tilsley, but you have the Banda brothers. You had James Tilsley. You had a strong running game, really good defense. And the Rams rode that formula all the way to another state title. They go back-to-back after winning on Friday night against Foxborough.
Listen, I didn't think they would make it quite this far. I was a believer in this program, and I thought they'd be able to get back to the Division 5 state semifinals this year. I just was, I was curious, like most people, to see how they would do offensively without Sid Tilsley, and they figured it out. Banda had over 1,000 yards rushing this year, and then we saw the first quarter at Gillette was the Dylan Pratt show. 2 quick touchdowns, and it looked like they were gonna rout Foxborough early on. Foxborough settled in, and they were still able to win a second consecutive slugfest over Foxborough. So I think as far as assistant coaches go, Brian Tilsley's been as good as there has been in the state the last couple of years. What he's done with that Shawshene defense, I mean, they're another team, right? We're talking about a tech school. They play in the Commonwealth League. It's a tough league, but it's all these vocational schools. They opted to challenge themselves. They played teams like St. Mary's, Bedford. They played some good public schools and some Catholic schools as well, and it had them battle tested for moments like this, and they were able to go toe to toe and beat a Hockomock team at their own game 2 years in a row. Just fantastic. I mean, I can't say it enough. It's just incredible what they did at a tech school here. This entire run, not just the last 2 years, but the last 4 years, 4 consecutive, state semifinal appearances, 3 times at Gillette in 4 years, 2 times state champions. And they've had a terrific defense throughout, and they've mixed in enough offense to win games. It's been a fun ride to watch these teams over the last 4 years. They have some nice pieces coming back next year, so they're another team that's probably going to be borderline top 25 again next year. But it's been one hell of a run for the Rams, and they're definitely worthy of this number 7 spot.
Man, Tewksbury's defense in any division, they were, probably ranked them as probably top 3 defense regardless of division. These guys just
Shawsheen, you mean?
Yeah, I said Tewksbury. Yeah,
Yeah,
Shawsheen.
See, that's what I mean. It's the end of the season.
Right.
We are on fumes right now, folks.
Well, excuse me, Shawsheen. These guys, what I love about their defense is these guys play man-to-man, 0 coverage the whole game. So if you got time to protect your quarterback, you could have chances to make big plays. But the problem is that front 4 did not give any offenses time to try to make the big plays. They got to the quarterback. They stuffed the run. Technically, we all could agree this game against Foxborough should have been a 14-0 game because we all are still wondering how they called that a touchdown on the lone Foxborough touchdown. I was right there when they called it a touchdown. I still don't know how they called that a touchdown, but this Shawsheen team was very, very great. All they needed was 14 points. Dylan Pratt, 2 big plays with the passes from Adam Caruso, and just the run that Shawsheen has had these last couple years. I don't think, in Coach Costabille's years, all his years of coaching, I don't think he's had a run like he's had these last several years with the group of guys he had. 50-2 for his senior class. That is just remarkable. A 27, 28 game winning streak so far. This was, this is one of those teams we're going to talk about in the future years, just how dominant they were and how good they were. 14 points was the most they allowed this postseason. No other team cracked double figures on them. I know I said that on our show Saturday, but you just got to reiterate that the most they allowed was 14 points this postseason. That speaks volumes of just how dominant their defense was this postseason.
Yeah, they were really good, and they deserve all the accolades that they get. And again, people forget. You're talking about an almost 30-game winning streak. That's impressive in itself. All right. Number 6 team in our poll is the Scituate Sailors, your Division 4 Super Bowl champions. As we said, they beat Tewksbury in a shootout, 42-41. Back-to-back championships for Scituate. And when you think about dominant public school programs in recent years, King Philip comes to mind. They've been on an unbelievable run. I would say that Scituate is probably the next team in that conversation. Like King Philip, in the last 8 years, they've won 4 state titles. It's been an incredible run by Herb Devine and his staff. And, people, and this is the thing, and I tell people this in regards to KP and when Brian Lee took over there and what the state of the program was. It's the same thing with Scituate. Herb Devine took over a program that was on its knees. It needed a jolt. It needed life, and he gave it that life. He built a culture. He started winning. They got to Gillette. They won their first one, and now they're a perennial public school power here in recent years. Devine's done a terrific job getting this program to where it is now. And where they are now is back-to-back state champs.
Yeah, back-to-back state champs, 3 in 5 years, 4 in 8 years. It's been one hell of a run here at Scituate. I thought Herb Devine had a terrific game plan against Tewksbury. And this team's not going anywhere. They lose a lot of pieces, but they still have Grayson Foley returning next year, among some other pieces like Tyler Stelgis. So this team's going to be in the mix once again. Grayson Foley, if he's on the first team all-state running back, he's certainly in the mix for a second or third team. Just a terrific athlete, and it's been Scituate. They started off a little slow, and they had that loss to Plymouth South, and then Grayson Foley was banged up towards the end of the regular season. It's like, okay, maybe it's not their year. Maybe it's more of a reset year for Scituate, but that was not the case. That was never on their minds. They were focused on Gillette the entire season, getting back there and defending that Division 4 crown. And they were able to do that.
Yeah,
It looks like we lost John.
Yeah, Situate, I would say it was looking iffy for them if they were even going to get to the semifinals game, just the way their season was going, some of the losses they had, but they were able to they were able to rebound and put together a run in this postseason, and it just showed just like the championship caliber and the championship DNA of the team. They never really they never cracked under the pressure. Being down 28-14 in that game against Tewksbury, uh, just making the plays defensively, making the plays offensively, and that final drive by Johnny Donovan was just a masterpiece in poise and controlling the line of scrimmage and controlling the clock. Just being able to understand the situation, to seize the moment as a quarterback in those type of moments. Those are the type of things you want to see from a quarterback, and really, really great season by those guys. You can't really say nothing bad about them and just how they were able to seize the opportunity. And the coach, as you said, coaches got them ready for this one, and it was a battle, but they came out on the right end of it.
Yeah, when Donovan threw that second interception and then they were down 28-14, I thought Tewksbury was going to pull away, but they never quit.
Yeah, I thought so
I don't know.
too. I thought so too because you see, with Tewksbury, they did that so many times this year where they just get ready to pull away. They turn a close game into a large lead, especially when they had the 2-score lead. It was kind of like, okay, we'll see. They'll probably pull away in the second half, but Situate themselves, they got a turnover that got them going, and it just everything turned out in their favor.
We lost the host just before we were about to get into the top five. I don't have my phone like right next to me. Has he sent a text or anything? Is he trying to hop back on here? I don't want to.
Yeah, he's going. He just said he's going. He said, "Hang tight, he's coming." It's on his end.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna come on. But
All right.
and other dudes, BC basketball just lost to UMass 76-74. And in a game, they once again late game issues with this team. I don't understand it. They can't execute down the stretch for some reason. They keep choking. I don't know.
Sad state of affairs for BC athletics.
Yeah, a very sad state of affairs, and you already seeing on Twitter. We're seeing the fire Earl chants and all that. But I don't think they're gonna pay that buyout.
Yeah, probably not.
And then we see Michigan. Michigan just fired their head coach.
That story like took a wild turn too. He like ended up getting arrested.
He got arrested. They say he like broke in the house or something like that.
Yeah, said he was gonna kill himself. I don't know. That's just what I've seen online. I don't think that's been reported.
Yeah,
by anyone.
Yeah, it's wild. There's a lot going on. John Walsh stepped down as Malden Catholic boys basketball coach. That was announced like a couple hours ago. He stepped down for that.
He did that today?
Yeah, he did that today. About like an hour ago. So
damn.
Yeah.
Season starts tomorrow.
Right. And they're saying, yeah. There was a lot of questions for Coach Walsh on either he was going to actually coach this season or not. But I think this is one of those situations. He stepped down to let one of the assistants take the head coaching realm and stuff like that instead of school going for a head coaching search. But quite the time to do it.
Might have to rethink the basketball top 25 now.
Yeah. I had them at least in like the top 15, but yeah, coaching does matter.
It's going off the rails here on John. It's turning into a basketball show.
Hey man, I'm all with basketball. They have a good one coming up this weekend up at the Reggie Lewis Center. 2 games. I think it's like the Beantown Slow inaugural, whatever they're doing for the first time. But it's to kick off the season. They got Cathedral and Fenway to kick things off at 5:00, and then Charlestown and Harlan School of Technology, formerly known as Burke. They're gonna cap off that night, close it out.
Charleston Holland would be good.
Yeah, that one should be good. I hear Holland School. I heard they got a really talented group this year. I think they got a big man that's supposed to be really good. They got the guard play. They're one of the favorites in Division 4, actually.
I think they opted up to 2.
They're up to 2.
I think so. I think they opted up, not even to 3, to 2.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know. I never know who's in what division until we get into the playoff time. Cause yeah. Now I'm the only one here. But yeah, I never know who's in. I don't know who's in what division now.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of Division 2. It's just been like Malden Catholic every year, but they're in D1 now, and now Walsh isn't there. But now you got St. Mary's in D2.
Yeah, I like
Pope Francis will be good too.
I like Oliver Ames.
Oliver Ames.
I don't know if they opted up, but I know they'll be a contender in D2. Them and Masco.
Yeah, Masco. I'd say Masco and Pope Francis. John, I apologize, but this just went off the rails and it turned into a basketball show for about 5 minutes.
Well, that's okay. All right, we just got to get. Hold on. So we just got to get. All righty, so I think we're back live, so that's good. Now we just got to get our show back live. So sorry for the technical difficulties. My internet, my internet went down for whatever reason. So unfortunately, it derailed us here for about 10 minutes, but we're back, and now we just have to figure out how we want to get our screen back here. But let's talk Scituate. We were talking Scituate, so let's pick up where we left off. We'll figure out the screen here, but as you were saying, Tyler.
Well, we kind of wrapped up our thoughts on Scituate before we started talking about what did we get into first? BC basketball, and then we went to high school basketball, and it just really got derailed. It turned to the high school basketball show. So apologize to anyone that tuned in hoping to hear only football tonight. We've just wrapped up thoughts on Scituate, the comeback over Tewksbury, the run that they've been on, how impressive it was. And now I guess it's your thoughts on Scituate and what they've done the last few years, John.
Oh, here we go. All right. Well, we're not. I think what we're going to have to do, unfortunately, is due to some of the technical difficulties, we'll just have to tell you the programs and share our thoughts, unfortunately. As far as my thoughts on Scituate, as I said, I think Herb Devine has done a tremendous job getting this program to a place where now they're a perennial Super Bowl contender. And I think, look, at the end of the day, one of the things that I think is important to mention here is they play in the Patriot League, which is a very good league across the board in sports, but it is an especially good football league. One of the more underrated leagues, in my opinion. When we think of the best leagues in the state, we talk Hawk, MVC, Catholic Conference. I think the Patriot League deserves some love as well. If you could get through that schedule, and you got Duxbury, you got Marshfield, you got Plymouth South, there's some good programs there. I think you can be battle-tested come playoff time. And so, again, I mean, look, to go back-to-back is hard enough as it is, but then to now be in a position, especially when you look what they have back, they'll be a top 15 program in our preseason poll next year. Grayson Foley's back. They've got some of those skill guys are back. A couple of their linemen are back. There's no reason why this team isn't going to be amongst the favorites in D4 next year.
Right. I think they'll be right in the mix again.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right. Now, the number 5 team in our poll, and I think this is the one that's going to ruffle some feathers. Not mine, but I already know. I've already been told by people there was a lot of expectations that this team would be a little higher. Number 5 team in our poll is the King Philip Warriors. coming off their Division III win on Friday night, beating North Attleboro 21-10 to win their second Super Bowl in 3 years, their fourth Super Bowl since 2016. This is a program that the last 3 years has gone 38-1, arguably the best public school program in the country. I had a lot of people saying to me, you know what? You coach there. You guys have been pretty good. You should be in the top 3 or 4. I said, listen, me coaching there doesn't decide where we place King Philip ultimately. Why is King Philip 5th and not higher?
I think this would, I don't know what you guys think, but I think this would be actually be an interesting or a good time to just go through the 5 through 1 in that order, and then we can sort of each talk a little bit about the different resumes of all 5 of the teams. So, okay, yeah, we got.
There we go. Yeah, we got them up.
As you just mentioned, as you just mentioned, John, we got the KP there. And then 4, if you want to go to 4, we'll just, I guess, just run through these real quick and
all right,
compare resumes.
All right, 4 we have Catholic Memorial.
I think 3 is going to be a big surprise.
Well, do you want me to stay it? Want me to
Keep going. Just fly through them real quick, and then we'll talk about them. Talk about all 5 at once.
All right, go ahead. Let's just start.
Okay. So KP, as you said, I think you misspoke there. You said best public school in the country. I think you meant to say best public school in the state.
That might have been a Freudian slip.
Yeah, I don't know if KP is on the level of like Duncanville, Texas, but hey,
no, I don't think so. Yeah,
no, it's been one hell of a run though for Brian Lee. You can pretty much say exactly what we just said about Scituate. We could probably say all of those things about KP. It's been a terrific run. I think there's an argument to be made that if CM wasn't in Division II, then KP would have 7 titles in 9 years, which is just ridiculous. They're a fixture at Gillette. I tried to keep it to just focus on this year, though. So the last 3 years and this run they've been on is all incredibly fantastic and just so impressive. But ultimately, I think the other teams have better resumes, and we could talk about that more once we get into those Final 4 teams. But listen, KP 13-0 13-0 this year. 1 loss in the last 3 years, 2 championships in 3 years. They had arguably the best running back duo in the state this year, Kig and Canto Osorio. They were able to throw when they needed to. They played great defense as always. Nice non-conference win over Natick, and then I guess technically non-conference wins over North Attleboro and Foxborough as well, and then of course beat North Attleboro at Gillette. In addition to ending Malden Catholic's Cinderella run, that Malden Catholic game is sort of why I have KP at 5 behind some of these Catholic Conference teams. That game was a little bit closer than the Catholic Conference, than Xavier and St. John's Prep and CM played Malden Catholic. So that played a part in it as well. And then I think just overall, strength of schedule from some of those Division I teams ultimately won out here. But that's, no knock on King Philip, absolutely deserving of the top 5 ranking this year. It's a team that is losing more than we're accustomed to seeing a King Philip team lose in terms of returning contributors. So might not be a top 5 preseason team next year like we've seen, maybe closer to 10 or 15, but they'll absolutely be in the top 25, and that's just a testament to the program that Coach Lee has and the coaching staff they have, the culture of the King Philip football program.
Yeah, this King Philip team, this program, they've had they've had a nice run of success these last several years. Good to cap it off with a state championship. These seniors, 4 years, 4 state championship games, 2 state championships on their resume. They just been epitome of winning and showcasing the talent that the school has. They were one of those teams. They had their moments. I feel like. People talk about they should still be in Division II or whatever like that. I mean, regardless of that, I think if they were still in Division II, I think they probably would have, against this year's Catholic Memorial team, I think they would have had a really good shot at probably winning the Division II. But regardless of that, this was a really talented football team. we know what you're going to get from them. Strong defense, great line play, solid running game, just playmakers all over the play. Very disciplined football team. So top five for them finishing the season in the top five. It's fitting just for all the accomplishments they've had this season.
Yeah, and I think, look, we've heard that a lot, and we briefly talked about it when we recapped the Super Bowls on Saturday night about the conversation about them going down to 3 and CM at 2. And look, it's a never-ending conversation. It's going to continue, and I'm going to continue to say what I've said, which is you can't look at realignment in football the same way you look at in other sports. For one, we have 8 divisions in football, which factors into it. 2, for a lot of the people that have said to me that King Philip opted down to avoid playing CM, that's not why they opted down. You can't opt down. You can only opt up. You'd have to appeal your placement down. And from what I've been told by people in the MIAA, not many, if any at all, were granted. The other thing is, to further prove the point that King Philip is getting smaller from an enrollment standpoint, next year they're going to play in the Davenport in the Hockamock League, which is the small side. And when you look at who's in the small side now, it's Mansfield, it's North, it's KP, it's Foxborough. The school's population is shrinking. So it's easy to look at this and say, well, they wanted to go down a division because they felt that they could dominate and they could win it all. Fine, I get why you would think that. But at the end of the day, it's not why they're in D3. They're in D3 because of enrollment, and they're in the Davenport because of enrollment. So this idea that they're ducking CM or looking to get out of 2, whatever. People are entitled to their opinions, but it literally, you could say the same thing with Marshfield, Barnstable, Milton, all these teams that, well, Milton was in 3, but Barnstable, Marshfield, KP, they all dropped down because of reduced enrollment. Plain and simple. They didn't opt down. You can't opt down. So it is what it is. As far as their placement, I probably, and I'm not saying this again because I coach there, I probably would have had them at 4. I'd have them ahead of Springfield Central. I just think it's hard for me to put Springfield Central ahead of them. I could see why you put the 3 Catholic Conference schools to a degree. Obviously all 3 had great seasons. 2 of them won a state title. 1 got to a state title game. But Springfield Central, to me, especially when you look at the fact they don't play the strongest schedule once they get out of Eastern Mass. That probably, their top 5 program, no doubt, I probably would have flipped these 2. But nonetheless, and due to our technical difficulties, the next program in our top 5, and I said I had them at, actually I said CM is in our top 4. They're at 4, not Springfield Central. So whatever. We're all over the place tonight, folks. Hey, I'll tell you what. Why don't we end this thing and start over? How about that? But CM is at 4. Amaral. Now, again, I will go back and say this, too. I think CM should be ahead of Springfield Central as well. I think that they should probably be higher as well. Why are they at 4 and not higher than 4?
Well, they're state champions, but in Division 2, and I don't think they would have won the Division 1 state championship. I'll just do the quick, logic between 4 and 3. So I'll talk about 4 and 3 together right now. CM lost to Zavarian close. They lost to St. John's Prep. That game wasn't all that close. St. John's Prep was in complete control of that game. Springfield Central, while they dominate the Western Mass portion of their schedule, they challenge themselves with their first 3 games. They always do. They went to St. John's Prep week 1. They were the only team to play St. John's Prep close in the regular season. They lost by 1 point, I think, in that game. Could have easily won that game. They beat eventual Division 1 champions Zavarian in the regular season, dominated Mansfield on the road in the regular season, and they beat a good Lowell team pretty handily in the playoffs as well. So I think ultimately just how they did, to me, Zavarian and St. John's Prep are by far, or not by far, but quite clearly the top 2 teams in the state. And for them to be able to go 1-2 against them, but very easily could have gone 2-1 against those opponents. I think that's why Springfield Central gets the edge over CM. And I know CM's in the Catholic Conference, but Catholic Conference was a little down this year, right? Like BCI wasn't that great. St. John Shrewsbury wasn't that great. Malden Catholic made a run, but ultimately they finished 5-7 and under 500 on the year. CM, I don't think the non-conference schedule was as good as it should have been. I know they played the 2, St. Francis and St. Thomas Aquinas, handled business in both of those ones. And then, you've got Neshoba Valley, who's a very good program, but they're a Division 8 school, and then they've got Brockton, who's struggling right now. So it just really wasn't that great of a year from a scheduling perspective for CM, especially when you consider that the Catholic Conference was in a bit of a down year for the Catholic Conference. I mean, the top 3 teams are all very good. Obviously, we have 3 in the top 4 here, so that it's the top end is as good as it's ever been. But 4 through 6, it wasn't quite as strong as we've seen in the past. So ultimately, just given how Springfield Central battled against those Catholic Conference schools, that's why I have them at 3 and CM at 4. I think if Springfield Central had ended up as the 1 seed, or if Xaverian ended up as the 4 seed, something like that, we're talking about, Springfield Central getting to Gillette and potentially winning it. I think they were that talented and that good of a team. Ultimately fell short to Xaverian, but that's sort of the logic there for me to have Springfield Central at 3 and CM at 4. And if we're lucky, these teams will finally play each other in the regular season next year, so we don't have to play this guessing game of who's better, that we can actually see it on the field.
Yeah, I agree with you. Them 2 teams, they definitely need to play together. I mean, hey man, CM, they 2 teams they lost to this season were both in the state championship game. I mean, so they really not much you can say about this program and what they've accomplished and what the product they've put on the field this season. The talent, they just retool and reload every year. I mean, they graduate a lot of guys this year, but they're gonna just retool again next year. They got some really good talent coming back for them. So I mean, we'll have this conversation again next season to see where they finished, if it's either in the top 5 or the top 10. But there's not much you can say about this program and their accomplishment these last several years.
I will say one of the things I struggle with any poll is the Final 5. I put a little bit more weight into getting to Gillette and winning it, obviously, than you do, Tyler. I think you make a valid argument for Springfield Central. I really do. You talk about their schedule. They lost by a point to St. John's Prep. They beat Xaverian during the regular season. Lost them, of course, in the playoffs. But again, I think when I look at this objectively, for me, I don't think there's any shame in a program like Springfield Central being 5, right? I get what you're saying about the schedule, and I agree with you that CM's schedule this year wasn't as strong as we've seen from them in the past. They would beg to differ, obviously. But I probably would have had them at 3, KP at 4, Springfield Central 5. But again, you can make a valid argument like you're making for Springfield Central as a top 3 program. I just think for me, at this stage of the game, I'm probably putting a little bit more weight on winning the state title. That's all. And again, I think for Springfield Central, they got to get the proverbial monkey off their back here. It's been a while for them. They got to get back there and they got to win one, because as good as they've been, that's the ultimate barometer. And they haven't been able to get over that Xaverian hurdle in the playoffs the last couple of years. And, of course, St. John's Prep beat them in the Super Bowl a few years ago. So they've got to prove that they can beat those 2 schools specifically, get there and win another one.
Yeah.
Definitely. I didn't think, 6 through 25 would, receive much criticism or pushback. I thought it would be this top 5, specifically 3 through 5. I think, you could rank the teams in any order, and I think there's a valid argument to be made for any of them. KP could easily be 3 and, Central 4 and CM 5, or, whatever. You can flip around those 3 teams in any order you want. Definitely open to, I hope people chime in and comment on this as well. I'm hoping to see some feedback.
They're going to comment on the terrible. They're going to comment on the terrible production that it was. That's what they're going to comment on. Figures that one time we have an internet breakdown, it's this show.
I know. Just before the top 5 too.
I know.
And I wonder if it'll be a request back by popular demand next year. The Mukala and Tyler basketball minute mixed into the football show.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out ways to splice that out. No offense. So I don't think I can do it, though. I think we went live and we're going to roll with it. All right. So that brings us to our number 3 team. Obviously, we've already talked about them. Springfield Central. You made your case. You talked about their schedule, that they almost beat St. John's Prep, beat Xaverian during the regular season, lost to them in the playoffs. I come back to the same thing. I think they're a top 5 program. My whole thing is, though, once they get west of 495, the rest of their schedule, in my eyes, doesn't hold up enough that they should be ahead of Super Bowl champions, especially in the first 3 divisions. So for me, I would have had them at 5. You explain why you had them at 3. Anything else you want to add to that?
Not really. No, I mean, I get that it's not easy, but logistically, but I hope that we do see this team play, an all independent schedule with, 7 or 8 games of just, teams from Eastern Massachusetts, from, maybe Rhode Island or Connecticut, maybe some New York teams or something like that mixed in. I think for, a few years there, they were really challenging themselves with these non-conference opponents. I don't even mean just IMG. They were playing some really good teams. So I would like to see that kind of expand. It's not easy logistically, but it is possible. And we see it in other states where teams play teams from out of state, or they're, playing these independent schedules and challenging themselves every week. And I think that might be something that they need, or maybe you do the inverse of what they've done somehow and play some of these teams at the back end of your schedule, because I think it's tough when your starters are only playing a half as you're trying to prepare for the playoffs on the horizon. So that's my final thought on Springfield Central. I'd like to see them get, at least 5, rather than the 3 games they've been playing, at least 5 games that are really going to challenge them and push them. I think they'll have them more battle tested come playoff time. But again, I made my case there. I don't know if Mukala has anything to add on Central.
It's just tough. Yeah, it's tough for them in Western Mass to get those a couple of the other non-conference games. Like they get the ones normally they'd have St. John's Prep, Zavarian, and before this year they had Central Catholic and Zavarian. So this year they had St. John's Prep and Zavarian, which is a good pickup. But being out in Western Mass, they don't really get challenged that much unless some of those other teams, they get really good at these next couple years. But with the group they got coming back, yeah, they're gonna have to find some of those a couple more of those non-conference games that's gonna prepare them for these runs. I know them and Zavarian are always gonna keep each other on the schedule just because they play such good games in regular season or in the postseason. I think they'll have St. John's Prep again next season, but it's like they just need a couple other non-conference games to prepare them. Maybe they might schedule a game with Catholic Memorial. A lot of teams don't want to schedule Catholic Memorial. Maybe those 2 teams. They've been discussions of those 2 teams playing for some years now, and there was that one year we're discussing who was the best team in the state between those 2 teams. So. Maybe they could get that going and find another opponent. But I think, with their conference and scheduling wise, I don't know how many non-conference games they're able to get because of their schedule and, that proceeds with the rankings. But, they could have been 3, 4, or 5. That's legit where fittingly they were, like in that range, 3, 4, or 5. Solid season. Got the guys coming back. They got Stain coming back. They got Rogers coming back. So, you have those 2 guys coming back. You'll be in the top 10 again next year to be the preseason top 10.
Yeah, they need to play. It's been long enough now. I think we need CM Springfield Central. They need to play, plain and simple. It's been long enough now. I think the time for talk is over. It'd be nice to see that happen. I don't know if it will or not, but it would be nice to see it happen. I think they need to play because I think it's good for Massachusetts high school football, and I think it's good for both of those programs. It's going to help you down the road. Look, it's no secret. The stronger your schedule is during the season, the better off you are. It's going to help you in terms of your power ranking and your points, and you're going to be battle tested come playoff time. And I think a lot of these coaches out there who are hesitant to play better schools, specifically in higher divisions, you need to reconsider this offseason because it's not just going to help your power rating. It's also going to help you in terms of being battle tested. Now, you're not going to go out and play someone over your skis either. You're not going to go out and play someone. I mean, look, I give Danny Kelly a ton of credit and Neshoba Valley Tech, but he played CM. I mean, it benefited him at the end of the year. They got the number 1 seed in D8, but yeah. I'm not saying you need to go that far, but I'd love to see these 2 play. I think it would be fantastic. All right, which brings us to our top 2 teams here as we wrap up our poll. Our number 2 team, of course, is St. John's Prep, the runner-up in Division 1, losing a shootout 41-35 to Zavarian. They lost to the Hawks twice in 1 week. look, I've said this now for the past few days. If you're a St. John's Prep fan, it sucks losing to Zavarian twice in a week. It sucks losing that D1 title game. Silver lining is, though, you should be the preseason number one next year, and you should be the preseason favorite in Division One. This team's going to be loaded at the skill positions offensively next year.
Oh my God! Vargas, Parent, Toribio, Selve. They got a couple. I think at least one. Might just be one offensive lineman returning, but they've got some nice pieces on defense coming back as well. They're probably the preseason number one next year. Who knows if that game would have been different or turned out differently at Gillette if Chris Vargas had been 100% healthy. I think it was clear that he wasn't 100% healthy in that game. It was a valiant comeback effort though, because that game was what a yard away from being 34-7 at halftime, and they got that break there towards the end of the half, and then Selve had that kickoff return for a touchdown. So they battled back. Coach Jean-Pierre, he's always going to have his guys in the mix. Tons of skill returning for this team next year. They were by far the best team in the state, unquestioned number one team in the state heading into the postseason. And then, they ran into Zavarian again, like they did in 2023 and lost both battles. But it was one hell of a year. They beat Springfield Central. They beat up on CM. They won that thriller against Leominster. They had a terrific run. That program's obviously going nowhere. And it was, couple plays, couple different bounces of the ball, and maybe they're number one and they're Division I state champions. But it's again tough to lose your rival, like you said, John. But tough to hang your head. When you have a season like St. John's Prep just had with 2 losses, and the only two losses are to Zavarian.
I think with St. John's Prep, they just gonna look and they dug themselves in a big hole early in that game. And when you dig yourself in a hole, you pretty much have to play perfect the rest of the game. And Vargas looked rusty for most of the game until he finally figured out the Zavarian defense. And once he figured that out, that offense started going. He started looking like the quarterback that that's getting all that praise. It's getting all those accolades. I just give a lot of credit to Will Wood. That run, he was determined. He had to get that first down, and he was determined to get that first down on that fourth and short bootleg right there. Because if he didn't get that first down and St. John's Prep got that ball back, they were definitely going right back down the field and taking the lead in that game. I truly believe that just because of the way Vargas started. Joe Vargas was hot, but Will Wood, man. Woo, man, this was a great quarterback matchup. It's just great to see 2 quarterbacks who both are underclassmen, who will be back next season, just battle it out like that. Will Wood, 345 yards, 5 touchdowns, just an exceptional game. Christian McIntyre, Dave Chivigato, they all played great. But St. John's Prep, they're definitely gonna look. I don't know if they'll watch the film of that game or they probably just burn it, but they definitely look back at that game and see that the mistakes they were making early on really was kind of the deciding factor in them losing the game and just not being able to get the stops they needed. There was too many times in that game they had a 3rd or 4th down and they just couldn't get off the field. So that's that. But overall, a really great season. As Tyler said, all their core guys are coming back. Toribio's coming back, Parents coming back, Riley Salve's coming back. That offensive line, I believe that offensive line is all coming back. I don't think they're graduating any players on that offensive line. So offensively, they're going to be a threat again next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the preseason number 1 going into the season. But this team is going to be scary. It's going to be a scary team next season, and they have some motivation too going into next season.
All right, and finally, our number 1 team, of course, is the Division I champions, Zavarian Hawks. And look, we've already pretty much broken down the Super Bowl. We don't need to revisit that. But I think when you look at this team, I think a lot has to be said for how resilient they were. This team was not you can make as good as they were at times, and offensively, they were very good. They were loaded. They played the majority of the season without Dave Shivigato. They really didn't have much of a running game for most of the season. It was really the Will Wood, Christian McIntyre show there for a while. Their defense kept them in a lot of games, but ultimately their depth, especially down the stretch, proved to be big. Sestito, Todd, that running game started going a little bit for him, and then they get Shivigato back in the playoffs. And then now, as Alfanaro said after the game on Saturday, you couldn't double both of those guys, because if you doubled them and you gave them a light box, they were going to pound the ball, which is what they want to do anyway. They really put defenses in a tough spot. I think their talent level, their first layer was really good. Their depth was good. Their depth got them to this point. Shivigato comes back. Their first layer takes over, and they look like the best team in the state, and they're going to finish as the number one team in our final MIAA Top 25 poll.
What's funny about them is they started the year as the number one team in the poll, and they didn't maintain that spot for very, very long. They lost that game to Springfield Central early in the season, and then they were stunned by Central Catholic in the regular season. But what, like they've done the last 3 years, they just figure it out. They hit their stride in November. They play their best football throughout November and into December, and that 5-week stretch is why they're the 3-time reigning Division I champions. And it's incredibly impressive what Coach Finaro has done with this team. They had those 2 hiccups in the non-league slate, but they were able to win the Catholic Conference crown this year. From what was the first time since 2018 they won the Catholic Conference.
Yeah.
So they won the Catholic Conference. They beat CM, who they hadn't beaten since 2018, and they beat St. Charles Prep twice in 9 days for the second time in 3 years. So it wasn't always pretty, but when it counts, when it matters most, they're playing their best football. This is another team that's going to be top 2 or 3 next year for sure. Just by having Will Wood back in the fold alone. So again, we talk about programs that are going nowhere. The Severian team, I think, is going to be well equipped to pull off that unprecedented 4-peat in Division I.
Yeah, those guys got healthy at the right time. There was a point in the season a lot of guys on that team were hurt. They had some guys miss some games like in the middle of that season, especially when they had that stretch where they lost back-to-back games to Springfield Central and Central Catholic. Some guys were playing not at 100%, but they were able to get healthy right at the right time, and it showed. Will Wood, between the semifinals and the state championship game, I believe he threw 9 touchdown passes. Over like 600 yards, very efficient as well. So he's a great leader. He had the weapons for Christian McIntyre and Dave Chivigato to finish out their careers the way they did. Chivigato with 3 touchdown passes and McIntyre with 2 touchdown passes. McIntyre probably had one of the more dominant postseasons, one of the more dominant seasons. Over 1,500 yards, I think over 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on defense. Just overall had a very, very great senior season for him to be named to be part of the All-State team. This team, a really good team, and Coach Finaro, he coached them guys up really well. They were prepared in that state championship game, and you just saw the results of that. But having Will Wood come back is going to be great, because when you have a quarterback with experience like him back, that alleviates a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think having him back is huge. And look, you're not going to replace Shivigato and McIntyre, but you got Sestito back. That running game should be pretty good. Zavarian is always good up front, so they'll figure it out up front. They'll replace some of the guys that they need to replace. And defensively, Finaro does such a great job with that defense that they're going to play good defense, especially when they need it. Look, they were in a lot of shootouts this year. So their defense, which is typically more of their calling card, this is a program that wins with their run game and their defense. I think they're going to win more with that formula next year than they did this year, but there's no doubt about it. Forget about their final record. when you look at what they did down the stretch, beating Springfield Central, beating St. John's Prep twice to win the Division I title, an impressive finish on the season to complete the three-peat. First time that we've seen a three-peat at the Division I level since Everett 2001, 2002, 2003. And it's the second time for Xaverian three-peating. They three-peated in the early 90s. So quite a run for Al Fornaro's squad. All right, gentlemen. I know that the show went longer than we wanted to. We had the technical difficulties here, about a 10 or 15-minute part of the show that you guys claimed you only talked basketball for a minute, but we were off the air for a little bit more than that. So it's probably more like 5 minutes. But final thoughts here before we really finally do put a bow on the MIAA season for 2025.
We've still got a few weeks to go where the high school football season is still top of mind. Again, coaches, players submit, primarily coaches submit your stats and nominees for the all-state team and honorable mention. Like we've done in the past, we'll put together 3 all-state teams and in one honorable mention list. We're different from I think every other outlet where they have like 4 quarterbacks on the first team. We're just one quarterback per team. So it's I think a very exclusive list, and everybody on that list certainly well deserving. So we hope to see a lot of schools represented. So submit that, and I put on Twitter yesterday, coaches, you are not allowed to complain about your players getting snubbed if you do not submit the information.
Yeah, I already got players sending me their stuff, so okay. The players will send it to. But also, as we're on, I got a DM from the folks at Shawsheen. They said thanks for the coverage and the attention that we've given to high school football in Mass, and changing the landscape, and they appreciate everything we did with the publicity for the kids and all that. So that was a nice message I got from the folks at Shawsheen.
Yeah, and Coach Costabile, I can't say enough about him. He's a class act. He's a gentleman. He runs a great program there, and we appreciate hearing that. I mean, look, it's a labor of love. I say it all the time, and we love what we do. And I know that the two of you, we're lucky to have the two of you working with us, because your passion for high school football is second to none. I mean, you're grinders. You work hard at it. You know the players. You connect with the players at another level, and I think your work proves that. So thank you again, gentlemen, for another great season of coverage. And what do you say? Let's do this again in 2026.
Let's do it.
Tyler, is there a deadline for submissions? Because I keep getting asked that question.
I would say, I mean, John, you and Kevin kind of have ultimate say on this, but I was thinking like cutoffs just before Christmas and then publish like first week of January.
Yeah. We usually publish our all-state teams after the new year. So I would say probably Christmas vacation week, maybe that Friday, the 26th, is probably our cutoff.
Okay. All right.
And then we'll publish after the new year.
Oh, and we've also got the players of the year and coaches of the year for every division coming as well. So
yeah, I was gonna mention that, so I'm glad you brought it up, Tyler. We're also gonna have our players and coaches of the year in Massachusetts and Connecticut, but we're gonna have our players and our coaches of the year. We're gonna unveil those in the next couple of weeks as well. Those coaches in Massachusetts and players will receive their plaques at the New England Coaches Clinic in March at Gillette Stadium in Connecticut. We will be sending them to you. So look out for those as well. That's the next thing we got to do here now, is we got to pick our players and coaches of the year in each division. So once we do, and we submit that over to Ken Nally and his team over at Championship Award Guys, we will announce the winners of each award in each division, Coach of the Year, Player of the Year. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up here in the next couple of weeks, but we got to sort that out. But as Tyler said, please feel free to get your player submissions in. You can send them to him, to me, to Kevin. You can DM us. You can email them. Whatever works for you. Just make sure that if you feel strongly, coaches, and I've had a lot of coaches come up to me this season and say, hey, I think this player of mine deserves this honor, then submit it. Submit their name, submit their stats. We want that. Yeah. This is why we do 3 teams. If you look at our honorable mention list, it's the longest one in the state. So a couple of things we take pride here, folks, with our high school coverages. We're the only publication or website in Massachusetts that has a true state poll all season long. And we don't pull from other people in the media community here. This is strictly our poll. So we're the only ones that do that. We take a lot of pride in that. We've been the only ones that have done that since our inception. And outside of the technical difficulties tonight, we're the only entity that covers high school football that does shows like this that presents our final top 25 poll. And part of the reason we do that, and Tyler will tell you this, is we do it because we want your feedback. If you don't agree with, where we slotted certain teams, hey, let us know. You're entitled to your opinion. But the bottom line is fan interaction. It's a big part of what we do, and we appreciate you guys coming along for the ride and supporting us as always. All right, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for a great season. Let's try to reconnect again this offseason and maybe do a couple shows here to keep the folks informed. There's always a lot to talk about in the high school landscape, but I want to say thank you for all the time that you put in to this season. Tyler, I want to say thank you for all the work that you put into our polls on a week-to-week basis, especially this poll. I know it's a labor of love. It's labor-intensive, and you do a great job with it, my friend.
Appreciate that, John.
And Mukala, as always, brother, thanks, man. You crushed those interviews. Hey, by the way, that Will Wood interview has over 30,000 views on TikTok. So there you go, brother.
Hey, man, shout out to Will Wood. His mom's always resharing the stuff on social media. So
yeah,
shout
it's
out
good
to
stuff,
Will
man.
Wood and his family.
Yeah, well, you do a great job with it. And again, I think, listen, I don't want to sit here and pat ourselves on the back for the next 5 minutes, but the reality is anybody that does it, whether it's us, the guys at the Globe, the guys at the Herald, the folks at Mass Live, they will tell you anybody can cover the Patriots. Anybody can even cover college football. I mean, we do all three levels, but this is labor intensive here. You got to love this stuff to do it. And we love this stuff. That's why we do it. So thanks again, guys. Appreciate you.
All right.
Of course.
All right.
Let's do it again soon.
All right. That'll do it for our final poll show, our final top 25 poll show. For Tyler Amaral, Mukala Kabongo, I'm John Serenitas. Watch the show. Go back and listen to it. Watch it. Forget about the technical difficulties. It happens. We're human. The internet isn't perfect. Enjoy the show if you didn't get a chance to catch it live. And until next time, peace.